Is tyranny coming to America? Fraudulent elections, lockdown 2.0. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fight for Liberty yet again. I know I've taken a couple weeks off and it's been kind of a stressful past couple weeks processing everything that the emotional roller coaster of the election had brought to us and continues to bring to us. It's not over yet, folks. The electors still haven't cast their votes. As we know, the Bush-Gore election in 2000, Al Gore was declared president for a period of time, 37 days, and we're not even close to that. So we see the president and Rudy Giuliani and his attorneys continue to challenge the integrity of the election. Now, hopefully this video won't get removed from YouTube, but if it does, we do have our site, thefightforliberty.com. Please join us there. We're going to show you some evidence, a little bit of evidence in this episode of potential voter fraud and maybe blatant voter fraud. Up to you to decide whether or not it's voter fraud. But we have multiple witnesses reports just from Giuliani's case. We have multiple videos of people throwing out ballots on TikTok, people finding ballots in the mail, which, again, people in Pennsylvania, the election officials in Pennsylvania have stated that a ballot should not be thrown out even if it can't be validated as counted. Even if the signature is wrong or something not to verify that ballot, it still shouldn't be thrown out. It goes through a period where it's reviewed for 18 months, well, stored for 18 months, reviewed the day of the election, and then stored for 18 months. Then sent through a paper shredder to shred the ballot, and then the ballot is then destroyed. Under no circumstances should that ballot be thrown in the trash.
Ignorance, not knowing, not understanding, brand new law.
So there's a detailed process in place?
Yes.
And this clearly shows that the process was not handled?
Yes, whoever was the judge of elections didn't do it correctly. The poll workers should not have thrown it in the garbage.
Is it legal to throw it in the garbage?
I do not know if it's legal to throw it in the garbage, but it should be sent back to us. And so we can hold on to it for, I believe it's 22 months.
So it remains to be seen, folks, what is going to happen with these lawsuits. A lot of states have thrown out the lawsuits. CNN claims that the president has been laughed out of court, but we know what's actually going on. The states do not want to hear it from the president and his attorneys because, again, these lawsuits are mostly on a state level. They haven't even got to that federal level. And in fact, the Supreme Court may even see these lawsuits come to the Supreme Court. Can the election be overturned? Now, that's a matter of interpretations. Many people, their interpretations have said that the election can, in fact, be overturned. Well, who knows what will happen? Who knows what the Supreme Court ruling will officially be? I think it has a potential definitely to be overturned. But right now, the mainstream media, and this is really a review of election night too, has totally declared Biden the winner. Now, on election night, I had to cut the stream short because I was so frustrated with all these stupid media outlets, all of them, frankly, with the exception of Newsmax, that were giving the states to Biden early, but when the president has 98 or 90% reported, Florida and Texas weren't even declared victorious for the president until the very tail end of the night, along with other states like North Carolina, which took 2 to 3 weeks just to declare him the winner of. And yes, you can argue the mail-in ballots and so on and so forth, but a lot of the mail-in ballots, in fact, weren't supposed to be even validated, through the 2-week period. In fact, in Georgia and Pennsylvania were the only exceptions, I believe, to this rule by the Supreme Court, especially Pennsylvania. Now, we knew Pennsylvania was having some sketchy things going on. We saw a premeditated kind of feeling in the air during the election day process, during when the polls were open. I remember hearing multiple reports, and I'll see if I can find these images so I can show them here or here, of people seeing that Biden and Harris signs were up at the election poll places, that they were kicking Republican poll watchers out, so on and so forth. We've seen this premeditated error in Pennsylvania. We knew that Pennsylvania had the fix. Now, whether YouTube removes this or not, I frankly don't care about the censors anymore. The gloves are off, folks. The gloves are off for me. They're off for many people. Mass amounts of protest happening in the following weeks following the election continue to happen across the nation. Lockdown 2.0, we'll get into that later, and the bull crap going on with that. But the tyranny is here, folks. We've seen these fraudulent elections have been fraudulent for years now. And Joe Biden winning is beyond me. I just can't comprehend. I mean, maybe people hate the president that much, but however, it still was a close election. People don't realize how close it actually was in these battleground states. We're talking about maybe 0.2 percentile difference, a 0.2%, not just a percent, a 0.2 or 0.4 percentile difference in a lot of these battleground states. Now, some of them had maybe 1% or 2% between the president and former Vice President Joe Biden. But keep in mind, that's still 1% between the two. I mean, this is 49 to 48 in some states and 0.4 and 0.2 in other states. How can we really determine a winner if it was that close? I don't understand that. I really don't get that. Now, it's okay for them to claim victory, but it's not okay if the president claimed victory. Remember that, folks. We may never know who actually won this election if we want to be centrist, so to speak, or take it from an outside perspective, a neutral standpoint. We could say, hey, we may never know who won this election. I will agree to that extent, but I will not agree that Joe Biden is a clear winner in this election. I will not agree. Frankly, the percentiles, again, are too close. They're too close. We're talking about less than 100,000 votes, and 100,000 votes just come in for Biden overnight. President Trump is leading 50 to 52% to 48 to 47% in some of these battleground states when we're all going to bed at whatever it was in the East Coast, 5 a.m., 3 a.m. here in Mountain Time. And the president is kicking Joe Biden's ass. Excuse my language, but he's kicking Joe Biden's ass throughout the night. And these states are still reporting 90%, 88%, and they're not declared. But yet a state like California that only had closed their polls within a half an hour to an hour of him being declared the victor there, already with 65% reported. Oh, because we know it's a guaranteed blue state, so we're just going to call it? Come on. And all these counties outside these major cities have went red. And all these battleground states that Biden supposedly won this year, President last time when he was running against Hillary Clinton won those states. He won Pennsylvania. He won Michigan. He won Wisconsin. I mean, how is it possible that the voter rate was that high for Biden when this guy is the most unpopular, demented guy, doesn't even know where he is half the time? They're running him on it. Elderly abuse. I mean, what is actually going on, folks, with our election process? I mean, the voter machines with Domino, we can get into that. I know a lot of people are talking about this, and again, I will show some evidence right now of just some videos that I've stumbled across of potential voter fraud that should be shown in court. We'll show you that right now. And it's insane, folks. People posting TikTok videos, laughing and thinking it's funny to commit a federal felony. It's not. These people need to be put in jail, held accountable. These election officials need to be questioned in a Supreme Court, in a court of law, of how much integrity is there really to these elections. We've seen fraudulent elections. As people have said before, presidents are not elected, they are selected. Well, now we're really seeing that. And we're seeing that Donald Trump, the man who had billions of dollars, this guy who you would not think would even give a tiny crap about running for president, didn't take a salary this whole time he's been president, the past 4 years. He's been fighting for the American worker. He's gotten the stimulus checks out. He dealt with the pandemic best that he could. I don't see Biden or any of these epidemiologists, COVID tyrant freaks dealing with this virus any better than the president has. The president's big mistake is letting the governors decide. Now, people would come out and say, it's unconstitutional what he's doing by telling them to open up. Well, at this point, it's been long enough. It's been almost close to 6 months that some of these states have been shut down. It's time for the DOJ and the Supreme Court and the White House to step in and say, hey, we need to stop the tyranny with the lockdowns. Anyways, we'll get into that in just a moment. But continuing with these election fraud allegations are insane. There's so many witnesses. The evidence is almost overwhelming. The average person can see it, but the person with a peanut-sized brain cannot comprehend that possibly their very democracy or their very voting system might be corrupt. Again, these people cannot comprehend the corruption at the deepest level, in the highest levels of our government, in the intelligence levels, in the banks, in the banking system, the Federal Reserve. They do not understand that there is corruption at the core of that. They cannot comprehend that. They think that everything is black and white and that it's all good and it's all bad. There's not anything this, and our perception is the way it is. There's no blinders over our eyes, but there are certainly blinders over their eyes because they're too blind to see the truth right in front of them. And they say, well, you voted for Trump. He's corrupt. He's corrupt. He's corrupt. But we're going to ignore Biden's corruption and the corruption of the DNC that has been so evident since the WikiLeaks drops with the Podesta emails and the Hillary Clinton emails, seeing that Bernie let Hillary take it from him, and he probably did in this election too here in 2020 against Biden, because Bernie was the front runner last winter, and all of a sudden he just drops off the face of the earth and votes suddenly. It's all very strange, but they ignore the corruption within their own party and blame the Republicans' corruption, which we know is clearly evident on both sides of the aisle. We know that the Bush era, these people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, career politicians, Bush-era politicians, Jeff Sessions, Mad Dog Mattis, generals and people who are part of the cabinets and things like that, are corrupt to their core, and they're more conservative. John Bolton, the big warmonger, Iraqi, bomb them up, shoot them up, profit, war, oil-based dude, Rex Tillerson, so on and so forth. All those people are corrupt, but yet they will point out the corruption in Donald Trump and say John Bolton is now our friend, even though we were criticizing him 2 years ago when he got assigned his position. Same thing with Jeff Sessions or Mad Dog Mattis. All of a sudden, we love Mad Dog. We love Mad Dog. Palpatine, droopy-faced Mad Dog Mattis is our friend because he comes out against the president. The Democrats will do anything to discredit the president. They will do anything to attack anything that has to do with him, and they think that we're right-wing extreme conspiracy theorists who are violent Nazis and all this stupid crap. I'm going on a rant here because I'm sick of hearing it. Nazis do exist, folks, in 1940s. Now we have a bunch of posers who think that they are somehow Nazis, but Nazis don't exist anymore, folks. And the percentage of white supremacists is a lot less than you think. Obviously, there's people who pose as Nazis, and I think a lot of them don't actually genuinely believe it. They want to make themselves seem edgy or cool or whatever it is, but they're disgusting, pitiful people. I think people who are white supremacists are disgusting, pitiful people. But I'm not saying that everybody's like that. No, like these leftists are. They're continually accusing us of being this way or that way when they're the ones who are corrupt. They're the ones who are ignoring the corruption, and they're too worried about fighting social justice issues that they can't even see the reason why those social justice issues are such issues is because they won't address the corruption at its core, which has to do with our banking system, which has to do with the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the UN, who has not done anything for us. The EU didn't do anything for the English, and the UN is not doing anything. NATO and the UN need to be abolished. They are corrupt to their core. The World Health Organization is corrupt to its core, but yet the Democrats don't even follow the World Health Organization anymore either because it's not fitting their narrative. The World Health Organization just said that lockdowns aren't necessary. I'll play the video now.
We in the World Health Organization do not advocate lockdowns as a primary means of control of this virus. We may well have a doubling of world poverty by next year. We may well have at least a doubling of child malnutrition because children are not getting meals at school and their parents in poor families are not able to afford it. This is a terrible, ghastly global catastrophe, actually. And so we really do appeal to all world leaders. Stop using lockdown as your primary control method. Develop better systems for doing it. Work together and learn from each other. But remember, lockdowns just have one consequence that you must never, ever belittle, and that is making poor people an awful lot poorer.
So I thought we trusted the World Health Organization. I thought they were the Democrats' best friends. I thought the recommendations were good, just as good as the CDC, according to the average leftist. Apparently not now. Apparently these Democratic governors are not following the World Health Organization guidelines anymore. They are following their own tyrannical measures. And as we get into this section about the lockdowns, I've been silent on this issue because I got tired of hearing COVID-19, COVID-19, COVID-19. And I was afraid that people would judge me based on what I actually think of the virus because it's so controversial to have an opposing view. COVID-19 is a real virus, I believe. I believe it's a real virus. I believe that people have died from it. I don't believe that the percentage of people, 250,000, have necessarily all been COVID deaths. Most of those, from sources that I've been told from people who were in the ICU and ICU nurses, have said that most of those people who have died of COVID-19 have had comorbidities, meaning that they had some kind of heart disease, diabetic, so on and so forth. That doesn't take away from the deaths. It's tragic. But we also see news reports, which I will show right now, saying that they are labeling a man who happened to have COVID-19 when he died, who got in a car wreck or shot, as a COVID death, even though they died from these different things such as car wrecks and gunshot wounds. And the CDC continues to label that, or the states have you continue to label that a COVID death. What is actually going on with COVID, folks? Well, I'm going to tell you now what I believe personally. We see infection rates rising high across the country right now, obviously. But the CDC also admitted recently that they won't be tracking flu rates anymore because apparently the flu is not as prominent as it was in previous years because of the coronavirus. So are these flu cases being tracked as COVID cases? I believe so, folks. I believe that the flu cases are being tracked as COVID cases. And that's why we're seeing such a high infectious rate. Now, you could take that and say it's false information, whatever. Okay, that's my theory. That's my opinion. Okay, that's not... I'm looking at, based off the evidence, making an observation of these pseudoscientists and these pseudo people who always want to make these observations too, but they won't allow someone with an opposing view to do that. I believe that they're accounting a lot of COVID cases as flu cases. I mean, as a lot of flu cases as COVID cases, folks. I believe that's actually happening. I believe there's a valid point behind that. That's just my opinion. Now, even if they weren't counting these flu cases as COVID, the mortality rate is still going down because the infections are going high, deaths are going down. We see that. The higher the infection rate, the lower the death rate. If the death rate is steady and the infection rate is going up, that means the death rate is going down. See the logic behind that? But they won't tell you that, folks. They want you in fear, panic, to hurt your immune system, to not go outside, not to exercise. They want you to be scared because that stresses you. Now, me, I've been stressed, not necessarily because of COVID. No one wants to be sick. I don't want to get COVID. I don't want to get the flu, okay? The same measures that I took against the flu, I'm taking against this supposed COVID virus, whatever that may be. I took the same measures last year. I'm taking them this year. Nothing has changed for me as far as that goes. I was paranoid about the flu last year. I was paranoid about the flu the year before. I'm always paranoid about the flu. So nothing has changed for me. I'm not more extra paranoid because the COVID virus or whatever it is, whatever. I'm not saying it's fake, but maybe we don't know what it is. Who knows? But folks, back to my point here is the infection rates are going high, obviously, but we continue to see them going high when mass amounts of shutdowns have happened, when mass amounts of mask mandates. I don't even go to the store anymore and see someone without a mask. I mean, maybe a couple months ago I did during the summer. I mean, when we had a big dip in infection rates, maybe people weren't carrying and they weren't wearing masks. But I'm still seeing these infection rates go high despite the masks being worn. So let's take the flu argument out. Let's say they're not counting them as flu cases. But they're still having lockdowns and shutdowns and mask mandates, but the infection rates are going through the roof still. So tell me, how is it spreading if everything's shut down and everyone's wearing masks? Now, some people will say, well, it's spreading through households. Okay. But no one's really going anywhere. I mean, you might go to work and back, but if there's a capacity limit at the stores and so forth, you're not getting exposed to as many people, so therefore you're less likely to catch the virus, right? Well, answer me that. How come if masks work and shutdowns work, then why are we seeing a huge infection rate? Why? If you're supposed to mask work, I'm at the point where, I was like, I want to see the data on the mask. It could be a good thing, and it might be a good thing. It might save you a little bit from getting infected, but not totally. It's not total. In fact, your oxygen is more precious than anything, because if you lose oxygen, you're going to go freaking brain dead, and I'm not going to go brain dead. And I refuse to go out there in public for a long period of time and wear masks for 8 hours and do this and do that. And, I feel for these employees that have to wear a mask. And now they're implementing testing inside of major corporations every 2 weeks for the employees. So not only do you have to be forced to wear a mask, but you have to be forced to have this test, which I've been told many times could be false positives. We've seen false positives in the NFL where these players would go in to practice one day and they all come up infectious at the beginning of the day, then get retested at the end of the night, and they all are negative because of false positives. But also, we've seen that these tests could very well be giving you COVID. I mean, there was a report out, let's see if I can find it and put it up here for you, that the test had COVID on them. Yes, they had the disease on them. They were getting people sick. So how far do we let this go? Because honestly, I'm sick of the fraudulent elections. I'm glad I made this podcast. I'm glad to be back, but the gloves are off, folks. I'm not holding back anymore against this totalitarian communist / New World Order, however you see it, dictatorship by these governors, by these sick tyrants, by people like Andrew Cuomo, Whitmore, Grisham, who else is another one? Oh gosh, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. I mean, we're not going to stand for this. The American people have to stand upright, and say, hey, we do not want our rights any more longer infringed by these stupid house arrests, which our very own Department of Justice called it house arrest. Our Attorney General said it's house arrest.
National lockdown, stay-at-home orders is like house arrest. It's other than slavery, which was a different kind of restraint. This is the greatest intrusion on civil liberties in American history.
It's unconstitutional. Now, William Barr, if you want to do something and you want to call it house arrest, start pressuring these freaking tyrannical governors and saying, hey, you need to let loose. Stop people. They're the ones putting people in cages. We are the people in cages. It's not these kids at the border anymore. You're so concerned about the kids at the border, but guess what? You're in a cage now. You, the American people, are under attack in a cage, in a prison, in a jail, in your own home, when you can't even walk outside without a mask. And these cops, who I support mostly, I am seeing tons and tons of police cowering to these governors and these tyrants and these dictators and implementing unconstitutional lockdowns and mass gatherings. They are trying to enforce that. And if we have mass amounts of protests, they will not be able to enforce that. And there's many ways to protest. Protest by going outside and not wearing a mask, and protest by going in an organized protest of hundreds, thousands of people. Go out and open your business. Protest. Have your family over. Protest in every way you can. Fight back. You know what? Go ahead. If you want to be scared, go ahead. But we, the people who want to spend time with our family, we will. We'll go. We'll wash our hands. We'll keep our hygiene clean as we should do already with the flu previous to COVID. And we will be safe, not cough on people, cover your mouth when you cough. Common sense crap. We'll continue to do that, but we're going to enjoy our lives without these stupid mandates, without these tyrannical measures. And to the cops, the boys in blue, who serve us with gratitude and are mostly good, to the people and the cops who don't want to enforce this, refuse to enforce it. Don't bother if you get that call that grandma and her friends are gathering for Thanksgiving. Don't even bother. It's not a priority call. They already admitted it on the news. They're not prioritizing these Thanksgiving calls for gatherings. These cops need to reevaluate the oath that they took. They need to reevaluate the obligation to their country and the Constitution. Because if they're enforcing this, they're compliant with tyrants, communists, and with the COVID-19 mandates with their governors, so on and so forth, and against our Constitution. If you're a cop and you're enforcing this, you're against the Constitution. And if an officer addresses me and says, you're in violation because you have this amount of people, or you're not wearing your mask outside, or you're not wearing your mask right, or whatever, I will simply tell them, sir, you took an obligation to this country to serve and protect us from any enemies, foreign and domestic. And you are in a direct violation of our Constitution and of the HIPAA Act. And simply tell them that. And I encourage people to tell any officer that wants to harass you because you're in violation of their stupid, tyrannical, draconian, New World Order communist bullcrap. Tell them that they are compliant with tyrants and that they're in a direct violation of our Constitution. I'm Daniel Chico with the Fight for Liberty. Keep on fighting. Let's take the gloves off. These sick, communist, bastard, globalist, New World Order scumbags are going to be going down because we, the people, are armed, we're ready, and we're protesting to take back our country from their fraudulent elections and their sick house arrest lockdowns. I'm Daniel Chico with the Fight for Liberty. Keep on fighting.